Believe it or not, this garden is only 3 years old. It's comprised of mostly native plants, some non-natives and some fruit trees. I wanted to plant a garden that was good for native wildlife. We've got some red wattle birds and lorikeets that come and visit quite a lot, and started 3 years ago with a pretty standard suburban, fairly boring, high maintenance garden, and over time have transformed it into something really beautiful. Well, I think it's beautiful. And it flowers mostly over winter. We do have some spring, summer flowers as well. But those winter flowers provide food for the rainbow lorikeets, the red wattle birds. You can see here that red flower is a Leucospermum, which is actually a non-native. It's from South Africa, I believe. And now here it's 3 years old, and it's still got some old flowers on it, but the red wattle birds in particular absolutely love it. We've got some Poa Poiformis, which is a native grass. Some of it's popping up self-seeded. I've planted most of this garden from tube stock, with the exception of a couple of the trees and a couple of kangaroo paws, but most of this is all from tube stock, so really cheap and easy initially to set up. And I'll show some videos in a little bit about what it was like when we first set it up. This is a Callistemon, which has beautiful white flowers in winter. It's called white Anzac, and we've got some green kangaroo paws scattered throughout the garden. I believe this ground cover here is a little saltbush ground cover. I believe it might be a berry saltbush. This here is a clay wattle. The seed pods are really interesting. They kind of squiggle and wrap around each other. They look really weird and alien when they're when they're green before they're dried. But yeah, they're quite interesting seed pods, and it has beautiful flowers in the winter coming into springtime. I'll show you a picture here. And then we've got some more Poa Poiformis plants. This here used to be my favourite. It was a lilac kangaroo paw. Beautiful flowers, but it's a little bit sick this year. It hasn't been doing too well. We've got an Isopogon. I'm not sure quite how to pronounce that, but that also has really nice flowers when they're bright, and the spiders love it when it's all dry. They make lots and lots of little webs in it. Here is a Spurwing Wattle. It's one of my favourite in the whole garden. It's very sculptural, very sharp and spiny, and you can see here how sharp it is, but it's just got a beautiful form, and that's about 3 years old. We planted that from tube stock as well. This was one of the established plants we kept in the garden. It was a Feijoia, or pineapple guava. Down here I've taken some cuttings of Pigface from my local park, and they've established themselves. More kangaroo paws. The flowers look a little bit spent. They're sort of past their time. I always keep a dish of water as well for the birds and insects. Here's an apricot tree, which I started 3 years ago from rootstock, and over time it's grown up, and I just love the form of it. It's just a really beautiful vase shape, and the flowers are really stunning. And down here we've got a lemon tree. Again, this one was already established when we moved in. And here's a sticky hop bush as well. So again, this is a 3-year-old plant grown from tube stock. So the tube stock cost $3 or $4 for one plant. So it didn't take a lot to establish this garden, really, when most of it is either cuttings, or I grew a lot of the Poa grasses from seed as well. I've got a bench here that I got from Facebook Marketplace for, $50 or so. More kangaroo paws. These ones are spent as well, but they're a green, tall green variety. And my lemon tree, which I just do a lot of chop and drop underneath it. So I just leave a lot of the clippings to mulch down. We've got a Boronia and a banksia in the corner here. This one here is a Cockies Tongue, which I got that reminds me of my grandpa who passed away. My mum brought some tube stock to his wake, and we all took home some. It's really nice to memorialise people and animals. This was my dog Frank, actually. He's planted underneath this Leucospermum there. It's called a tiara, he was a bit of a princess, so that's why I put him under there when he passed away. It's a really nice spot to sit out with my grandpa Cliff and my dog Frank on a nice day and just enjoy the view of the garden and the birds. I really enjoy sitting out here when the weather's nice and watching the birds, particularly the red wattle birds, come in. I've got a Leucadendeon here. Again, this is a non-native. It's one of those South African varieties which are somewhat related to Australian natives because they originated in the Gondwana land. Got some Salvias too, and my beautiful silver princess tree, which brings in a lot of birds. You can see here what it was like initially when we planted it and the beautiful blooms that it has. Just lovely, and I love them. Clay wattle again, and underneath it is a creeping boobialla ground cover. This was a $3 tube stock, and if you know how big tube stock are, they're really small when they start. So this one's 3 years old and it just spreads and spreads and it sends out little roots from the creepers. So it has absolutely covered this massive area here, and I've taken a fair few cuttings from it too and planted it throughout the garden. I've even put some underneath my veggie beds, my raised beds in the mulch, so that I can sort of walk on it when it develops a bit more. So yeah, that's my native garden. I hope you enjoyed the tour, and I hope it inspires you to transform your garden again from something maybe a little bit suburban to something pretty special. Again, this was a 3-year project, so we started off by mulching the couch grass. We had a lot of couch and kikuyu, so I used a lot of cardboard underneath this mulch to kill it off. I'd planted a couple of trees here because I wanted them to get established. So the Silver Princess, Eucalyptus Caesia, and then the apricot trees, and I planted some of the kangaroo paws and things around the border and removed the concrete border. Again, this used to be one of my beautiful kangaroo paws, which was a lilac kangaroo paw. You can see the flowers are stunning. Over time, we put in this rock bed and filled it up so it was a little bit more raised, and then eventually we planted it out with tube stock, which I'll show you a little clip of here. So you can see the tube stock, you can see just how small everything is, and within a couple of years it develops into something really special. So I hope you are inspired to start your own native garden. Doesn't require a lot of work once it gets started. I probably fertilize it twice a year with a native fertilizer and give it a good water every so often. But aside from that, it just mostly looks after itself. Over in this corner behind the Feijoia is where I drop a lot of the cuttings that I take, and I even pop some of the bigger logs that I've cut, big branches of the Feijoia there, and of other trees and things out in the garden, just to create a little bit of a habitat for insects and maybe some lizards and things that want shelter there. A little bit of a close-up here on my kangaroo paws, which I planted out the front of the windows here. So in winter they'll send up their flower spikes, which will then develop into spring and summer, and they're just gorgeous. So these are a mix of yellow and orange tall kangaroo paw varieties. So yeah, I hope you have enjoyed my native garden tour, and that it's inspired you to perhaps plant your own native garden, or mix of natives and non-natives. It's a fairly low maintenance garden, as I said. It mostly looks after itself with the odd bit of weeding and fertilizing, and I just love the flowers that it gives me.